My name is Gretchen Vogel. Thank you for coming to play with my ideas today. My channel is based in meditations that I've done and downloaded information for many decades now. This is the second installment of the grief series. Not sure how many there are. In the first one, we saw how grief is generated in the physical body, and then it is either suppressed, delayed, or put off by the mind, our conscious mind. But the endocrine system is still producing the chemical markers of grief. So at some point, it's a very healthy thing to feel our emotions. I do have earplugs in, and I am playing sort of prompts from the meditation because I can't say it any better than my guides and angels do, or whatever the source is for the information. So thank you. We'll get started. The ability to grieve is somewhat biologically preset, but the ability to manage grief is not universal, because mental self-management, spiritual self-management, mental self-management has to be developed in life. The ability to manage physical breakdowns, is focused in physical management. If you're going for a degree in formal education, you do learn to control yourself or manage yourself mentally, because that's the part of yourself you're exercising. Mental self-management is important in the case of our learning and memory, and spiritually, of course. We have the seekers, the people who want to understand the mystery, who are open to the invisible realms, who are interested in developing a practice involving spiritual pursuits, and that is spiritual self-management. So someone who's interested in managing themselves spiritually would be interested in learning what other people know. So these areas of management are fairly well known, but emotional management is not well understood in our species. We just feel that we have emotions, that we're at the mercy of them. We don't think of them as something we can manage, but we can learn to manage emotions, just as we learn to have self-discipline with our body. I mean, if sugar or alcohol makes you sick, you don't eat or drink them. If smoking cigarettes make you sick, then you don't smoke them. But when people have an emotion that is actually making them ill, they often feel helpless to stop feeling that emotion. They don't want to feel it, but they don't know how to manage it. It isn't common knowledge, but it's part of self-management. As we age, we do learn this, because either that or we'll just be cray-cray. I mean, we have to do this as we age. And perhaps that's what part of wisdom is. So it's not as if we should not feel grief. Management is not feeling it. That's not what they're saying at all. But we can have the same perspective on grief that we have on any other thought that we have to manage. Say we have circular thinking, And we know that obsessive circular thoughts are not good for us, but we haven't figured out a way to deal with them. Personally, I dealt with mine through Sanskrit mantra. Finally, I got a break from my mind. You go to very complicated mantras in a different language, and I'm not even sure what I'm saying or praying or expressing. I just do it. And it's incredibly helpful. So, back to grief as an emotion. It is necessary to feel grief. It is necessary to have that emotion because it's one of the emotions that the body produces a lot of the time. But our mind can deny grief. Our mind can hold it off and refuse to feel it. So that is a possibility. Just as the other polarity is a possibility, when feeling grief becomes an addictive emotional experience. And we'll get into that as we move along also. In the meditation, I had asked how people can help people that are feeling a lot of grief. I mean, we tend to avoid people who are feeling a lot of negative emotions. Whether they feel that negative emotions are like contagious, but people will avoid a very angry person. People tend to avoid very fearful people. People tend to avoid any person that will not reassure them that basically things are okay. So then I asked, is there a length of time or a quantity of grief that is I know myself that 9 months is what it takes for me to lift my head out of the major losses. And the pain of the major losses will start to diminish after about 9 months for me. But they're saying everybody's endocrinology is different. So different people grieve differently. And of course, from the outside, they might look the same. But they are withdrawn from the world. They are preoccupied with their grief. They may have crying jags, hypersensitivity, or shortness with other people. Grieving people can't take in new information well. This is one of the telltale signs of grief. They don't take in information. So if you're emailing somebody or making an appointment with somebody and they completely seem to blow you off, but actually they forgot because they really didn't take it in the first place. But it's not the grief or the capability or ability to grieve a certain loss. It doesn't go away. It's not as if you can feel a certain amount of grief and then it goes away after a certain time. So, as we know, grief originates in the body. You're going to either acknowledge that feeling and release the emotion from our body later when we're in a private place. If grief comes up when you're in a situation where you're not able to grieve, you might put it off. You might feel the grief as anger, denial, any of the other emotions, which also releases the emotion of grief. Now, the crying, as we know, does bring chemicals to the outside of your body. So that's very helpful. Okay, I'm going to stop this here. Wait, stop. I'm going to stop this here because I want to share a little story. And maybe this is why my angels maybe pull out this meditation, or some energy made it fly out. I recently started infusions for my rheumatoid arthritis. I'd been trying to avoid it for a very long time, and finally I said, "Well, I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and do the science." So, uh, some of you know that I was on a cancer journey with my brother in Texas in 2016, and is since in spirit. And I took him to all his chemotherapy labs, all that sort of thing. And I also fed him, and I also touched him all I could because he was not a touchy-feely person, but I am. Anyway, so when I went up to the infusion center, which is where it's a cancer infusion center in our hospital, I lost it. I mean, I absolutely lost it. I mean, I just started to sob, and thank God my husband was with me. But the nurses were like, "Oh man, we got a nutcase here," right? Um, I mean, sometimes your grief actually frightens people. That happened in a taxi cab when I was flying back home. During that year, I would fly back and forth every now and then. And I got into a taxi cab. And you know, when you're with somebody who's sick, you project calm to them because you're being receptive. It's not the sick person's job to make you feel better. It is, so, you know, you kind of keep it together when you're with somebody who you really love a lot, who's dying. Um, anyway, I got into the cab and I just lost it. I mean, I lost it. So the cab driver, when we got to the airport, said, "Oh no, I forgot to put on." I mean, I had him so rattled that he forgot to put on the meter, you know, to count. And I said, "Look, this is usually around $60. You know, here's 75 with your tip. I know what this costs. You can work it out with your company or not, however you want to do it." Um, anyway, so those were uh, two notable times. You know, if I ever do lives, if I ever have good enough internet to do lives, I would love to do grieving as a topic. So there's more on management and learning to manage grief. I believe in this meditation. So we're going to look at that next. All right. Thank you so much for coming to listen and play with me today.